Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, that's pathetic. Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote, vote, vote. Vote for me. If you don't vote, that's pathetic.
We're leading in Arizona, Nevada. We're leading in Pennsylvania. Winning Tampa to Tallahassee. From Pensacola to Miami. Winning. I'll kiss the guys and the beautiful women. And now they say I'm immune. I feel so powerful. I'll walk into that audience. I'll walk in there. I'll kiss everyone in that audience.
I don't like either one of them, so I'm not going to vote. You just voted for the wrong one. Yeah, but I don't like either one of them. Then you just voted for the wrong one. Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, that's pathetic. Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote, vote, vote. Vote for me. If you don't vote, that's pathetic.
This president knew back in January. Why didn't he tell us? Why didn't he warn us? He told Woodward he didn't want to panic. We don't panic, but Trump panicked. I'm running as a proud Democrat for the Senate. I'm running as a proud Democrat for Vice President. I'm running as a proud Democrat for President. Which way am I going?
I don't like either one of them, so I'm not going to vote. You just voted for the wrong one. Yeah, but I don't like either one of them. Then you just voted for the wrong one. Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, that's pathetic. Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote, 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 vote for me. If you don't vote, that's pathetic. If you have the idea that you're gonna have to wear a mask in November, you got more faith in this virus. Even if you do, put your mask on and go vote. Something that is equally pathetic is people that don't vote. Cast your ballot, which is your seat. We have to put a stop to fight over politics. I don't like either one of them, so I'm not going to vote. You just voted for the wrong one. Yeah, but I don't like either one of them. Then you just voted for the wrong one. Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, that's pathetic. Vote, 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 vote. If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote, 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 vote for me. If you don't vote, that's pathetic.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to the Vanguard. For Spike, Chris, Khalid, Kosher, Cohen, I am Matt Wright, and together we are traversing the muddied waters of freedom.
Say that again, Chris?
Khalid, Kosher.
Who is that supposed to be?
Chris, Khalid.
That's the first one I've never heard of. Hey folks, thanks again for tuning in tonight for Debatemageddon 3, the final countdown where we watch this debate between the two clouds that are trying to steal the election from Joe Jorgensen. I am Spike Cohen, and with me, as always, well, you already said that, is Matt Wright. And I am again, third time in a row, second time in the show and also in my show, I am here in front of a live studio audience that is here to watch the debate with us. Hey folks, say hi. We are here in beautiful downtown Cedar, I don't know, uptown. We are here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and somewhere in the town. We are here at the White Star House, watching the debate live. And be sure if you're watching this at home or listening to it later, be sure to follow whatever, follow us on whatever platform you're watching it or listening to this. Also be sure to like, follow, or subscribe anywhere that you are watching this, and be sure, of course, to follow the Muddied Waters today. Kids love it, and I am being told that no one can hear me.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say something at the end of your.
No one can hear me.
Right.
You can hear me.
I can hear you. I can hear you just fine.
Okay, so we're halfway there.
Right. I can hear you just fine. So it has to be on the fact that it's so, because we were worried about how quiet it was.
Okay. Well, let's see if I can do something about that. Is it no one can hear me?
Nobody can hear you.
Okay,
Let me
good.
try this.
Yeah, levels are all the way up right now.
Yeah, yours, like on mine, where it's reading the levels, where you usually come in and you're hitting yellow on my meter,
Yeah.
you're not even going halfway up the green.
Okay, all right. Well, that's not good. All right. Well. Oh man, is there maybe like an audio? Oh gosh, is this an audio thing? How do I sound now?
Yeah, the same.
Oh, you can.
Right.
How do I sound now?
The same.
No, it's not all the way up.
Is that
Good.
Abdul McKinney wants to know if there's a volume scroll on the headset itself.
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
You just did something. Now I can't hear you at all. Nope. We didn't have time before the show to go through this, and we were like, it's probably okay. Apparently, we needed to check that a little bit better.
Yeah, this isn't. Okay. Let's try it. I may need them. Yeah, I may need them in one second here.
So while Spike is doing this, just want to remind everybody that you can go to the store at muddiedwatersmedia.com and hit the button that says store. In there, you can find all sorts of gear that says Spike all over it. You can also get Muddied Waters Media shirts and this fabulous Muddied Waters Media hoodie that is very comfortable. It's about the same. Hang on a second.
How about now?
That is better for me. Say something else.
Hi, I'm Spike Cohen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Say something else.
Hi, I'm Spike Cohen.
Okay, that sounds a lot better to me. Yep, got it.
Okay, everyone's saying yes, yes.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. We are doing it.
All right.
Yes! We did it. We did it together. And now let's, you know what? Probably the best way to do this, now that I'm doing this, probably the best way to do it is to use the audio from this debate for everyone to hear it. And then that way everyone behind me is reacting to the same audio we are. What do you guys think of that? Yeah. All right, we're doing that. So, hey folks, there's a debate happening right now, or actually will be happening in a couple minutes. And we were going to talk about that for the past few minutes. My mic didn't work.
Right.
So let's talk about that now.
So basically, we're going to be talking about the exact same things that we talked about in the first debate. I don't.
And allow me to thank.
Oh yeah, that thing. Allow me to thank Siesta Cava for the cava that I am drinking on today's episode.
And allow me to thank the White Star Ale House for this water that I'm drinking on this episode, Bulavanaka.
Bulavanaka.
That is delicious tap water.
That is delicious. This show is brought to you, as always, by the Jorgensen Cohen 2020 campaign, the Libertarian Party Waffle House Caucus, the fastest growing waffle-related caucus in the Libertarian Party. I don't know. Black
or any other party in America.
Yes. Black coffee, black organic coffee. That is spelled BLVCK organic coffee. It is the best cold brew coffee that is misspelled on Earth. And you can get that at Black Brews, BLVCK, blackbrews.com. Use code MW for free checking at shipout. Free shipping at checkout. The Libertarian Party Dad Bod calendar featuring the sexiest men in the Libertarian Party, including Mr. April here, to remind you that taxes are awful. And as always, this episode is brought to you by personal injury attorney Chris Reynolds, attorney at law.
Well, folks, we saw the first clown show, and they've added a mute button this time. So, in theory, this should be slightly better because they know that they'll be muted.
Yes.
But my theory is that they'll actually just scream so loud that the other guy's mic will pick it up, thereby making this into an even bigger clown show than the first one.
Yeah.
But we shall see how that turns out.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, the debates aren't going to be the topics of this debate aren't going to be any different from the ones beforehand. I think I should have written all of this stuff down, and I really meant to, but then my phone died. But only one of the topics is different from the first debate, which the Trump administration had an issue with, and they wanted to focus more on things like foreign policy as opposed to COVID and race in America and American families and things of that nature.
Yeah, exactly.
So essentially, this is going to be the exact same debate that we've already seen, just possibly with more, possibly with less screaming at each other. But that means less opportunity for Joe Biden to say, "Will you just shut up, man?"
Which was my favorite part of the first debate.
That was my favorite part of the first debate.
What's interesting to me is that, again, my theory is that they're going to yell over each other. I think that it's actually going to be worse. And that's kind of my hope, like low-key, that it is my hope. Because A, that's the most entertaining. And B, anything that results in people walking away from this realizing that they couldn't potentially vote for either of the clowns that are running, that are on that debate stage, helps our campaign by default. So I am looking for Joe Jorgensen and myself to finish our sweep of these debates.
So one thing, if we all remember back in 2016, Trump brought like all of the women that have accused Bill Clinton of sexual assault to the debate. This time he is bringing Hunter Biden's associate, Tony Bobulinski, who is one of the partners in an old business with Hunter Biden. So I think he's trying to get under Joe's skin with the whole laptop from hell, as Trump calls it, and bring somebody who has some sort of knowledge of any of the dealings Hunter had.
I think that Donald Trump is thoroughly overestimating Joe Biden's ability to remember who people are, including himself.
Right.
And I think that might backfire, because he's going to say, "Yeah, there's Tony Bobulinski over there," and Joe Biden's going to say, "That's fantastic. My name is John Newsom, and I'm running for Senate." So I'm not sure how well that'll work out, but we'll find out. It's a bold strategy.
Yeah, it's a bold strategy, Cotton.
Bold strategy there.
Oh, so
looks like it's starting.
Yes, we are just getting started there.
Good evening from Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm Kristen Welker of NBC News, and I welcome you to the final 2020 presidential debate between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. Tonight's debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. It is conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Commission's health security advisor. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, boos, or other interruptions, except right now, as we welcome to the stage former Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald J. Trump.
I'm already seeing him up here on the TV screen, and Donald Trump is the orangest he has ever been.
He is really orange.
He is extremely, almost like a burnt orange.
And yes,
that's really neither here nor there.
And I do want
I guess
to say
if you're going to do it, lean
good
into it.
evening
Just be
to
so
both of
orange.
you. This debate will cover 6 major topics. At the beginning of each section, each candidate will have 2 minutes uninterrupted to answer my first question. The debate commission will then turn on their microphone only when it is their turn to answer, and the commission will turn it off exactly when the 2 minutes have expired. After that, both microphones will remain on, but on behalf of the voters, I'm going to ask you to please speak one at a time. The goal is for you to hear each other and for the American people to hear every word of what you both
These are
have to
grown men
say.
that they're having to
And so
say,
with that,
"Don't yell
if you're
over
ready,
each other."
Let's start. And we will begin with the fight against the coronavirus. President Trump, the first question is for you. The country is heading into a dangerous new phase. More than 40,000 Americans are in the hospital tonight with COVID, including record numbers here in Tennessee. And since the two of you last shared a stage, 16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world.
This is
in order
odd
to
because
fight
he said
this
that it
horrible
was going
disease
to
that came
go
from
away
China.
like magic.
It's a
But now it's
worldwide
2.2
pandemic.
million.
It's all over the world. You see the spikes in Europe and many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%. The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges.
I know,
in
my
other
name has already
places.
been
They
said
will
like
soon
5
be
times
done.
during this.
We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready.
The best advertising
It's
you can
going
get.
to be
Best
announced
happening.
within
We're having
weeks,
spikes.
and
There was a
it's
spike
going
in
to be delivered.
Florida,
We
and I
have
am now gone.
Operation Warp Speed, which
That's
is
true.
the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital. I had it, and I got better. And I will tell you that I had something that they gave me a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure. But I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that. But
he got better faster
more and
because
more
there are
people
3
are
treatments he
getting
received
better.
that the
We have,
FDA does not
a
allow
problem
you and
that's
me
a
to be able to get if we get
worldwide problem. This is a
COVID-19.
worldwide
So it's
problem.
very interesting
But I've
that a
been
man in his
congratulated by the heads
70s
of many
who has
countries
health
on what
problems
we've been able
got
to do
better within a week,
with the-
and according
if
to
you
them,
take a look at what
is
we've
not
done in
spreading it
terms of
anymore and
goggles
has no
masks
virus
and
levels at all.
gowns and
That's a
everything
direct
else,
result
and in
of
particular
him being able to have
ventilators. We're now
access to
making
right to try
ventilators
treatments
all
that
over
the rest of
world,
us aren't able to
thousands
try.
and
It's a perfect
thousands a
example of
month,
how the FDA
distributing
fails
them
us
all over
and
the
costs
world.
human lives
It will
every
go
single
away,
day.
and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's
You can
going
clap
away.
anytime you want. I heard the clap.
President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of
That's
America.
correct. That's why
We're
you
in a
and the
situation where
Republicans
there
and
are
the CDC
1,000
and FDA, who set it out so that medical professionals couldn't test COVID patients for the first 2 months that the virus were here, should never be allowed anywhere near office ever again. That is 100% correct.
As the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, the president's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president thus far and still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time.
Everyone's already encouraged to wear a mask.
Everybody
You
is
literally
already.
just
Rapid
did that.
testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe.
That's the
and give
opposite
them
of what
the
we need.
wherewithal, the
Each
financial
school in
resources
rural
to be
South
able to
Dakota
do
or
that.
here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, she needs a completely different standard than one in New York City or New Orleans or Los Angeles or somewhere else. It should be the individual communities deciding what is best in terms of opening up schools and everything else for that matter. There's absolutely no reason we need a national plan. It's a national plan that got us in the mess that we're in right now.
Have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you and your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are 2 companies, I think, within a matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very quickly.
Can you tell?
Wasn't it
We're
supposed to be
still
before?
waiting for a vaccine for SARS. We're still waiting for a vaccine for Ebola. We're still waiting for a vaccine for HIV. There is zero guarantee that there will ever be a vaccine.
Right. And wasn't he saying that there was going to be a vaccine before we got to the election day?
Yes.
Officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022. Is your timeline realistic?
No, I think my timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up.
The
One in
military?
particular, that's the head of logistics, and this is a very easy distribution for him. He's ready to go as soon as we have the vaccine, and we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your reaction and just
Because remember in the last debate, he was talking about having the military disperse vaccines. And we were saying that Joe Biden was going anti-vax, while Trump is saying that the military is going to be the one that's going to be dispersing the vaccines. So,
Oh, that's right. That was when Joe anti-vax Biden very briefly was telling people that they shouldn't get a vaccine if Donald Trump wants them to, while Donald Trump was talking about using the military to make sure everyone took the vaccine, which was that was interesting.
right.
That was actually one of the few times that they didn't just yell at each other. And it was honestly possibly the most horrifying.
Right.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you have no
I don't think we're going to
plan.
have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe, But China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it
Okay,
too soon.
we have to mute this. This is the same
I
nonsense
should've,
we hear every single time. Once the virus is here, it doesn't matter who comes or goes. Once it's here, it spreads exponentially. The whole point of allowing testing as soon as it got here was that this could have potentially been contained without closing anything, without closing trade, without closing travel, without closing businesses. You could simply, when someone either had symptoms or just wanted to be tested because they were around someone who may have had symptoms, they could have easily and quickly been able to test people if they had just let them do it. Test kits were already being made in this country. Starting in January, we had millions of approved COVID-19 test kits that were proven to work, and they were all being sold overseas because it was illegal for them to sell them here, and it was illegal for anyone to use them. So all of this nonsense, and you will notice neither one of them will mention this. Neither one will mention that their shared CDC and FDA did this to us. They can't mention it because they would have to acknowledge that both of them and their parties and their policies and their agencies are why hundreds of thousands of Americans are going to die. And they will talk about anything else. Joe Biden will talk about how Donald Trump had a cavalier attitude about it. Donald Trump will talk about how he tried to close the border with China. They'll talk about anything other than the actual cause of why it's happening so bad here in the first place. And that's that they didn't let medical professionals do their damn job and save people's lives.
Again, I go back to this. He had nothing. He did virtually nothing. And then he gets out of the hospital and he talks about don't worry. It's all going to be over soon. Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
Man.
President Trump, your reaction?
I say over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like.
Do I do that? I know I do a lot of stuff with my hands. Do I do that?
He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace.
I do this.
Did you catch the hit that he's given?
What?
Did you catch the hit that he's given him for locking himself in the basement and not leaving all summer long?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was also in his bunker, but yes.
I can't do that. And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including Gold Star families and military families. Every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. I had to. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, this is dangerous, and you catch it. And I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals, and now I recovered. 99.9% of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can.
What you also
sick
need to
with
do is allow
COVID-19
people to
and
be
pass
able
it.
to sue bad actors if they are knowingly causing super spread incidents. Instead, both Republicans and Democrats passed the CARES Act, which indemnifies businesses who may engage in bad actions. So you're mandating, but they're both orange right now. What the hell is going on? Why are they both orange? They're like getting increasingly red, at least on this TV they are. But
Joe's trying to
the one
look
thing you can
presidential.
do- That's what, I guess, it's a presidential shine. The glow. The one thing you could do is allow them to be held liable, and instead they're doing the opposite. They're protecting businesses from, they're indemnifying them against lawsuits. That would be one of the most powerful ways to stop the spread, is let them know that if they engage in allowing things to happen in their businesses and premises that allow for the spread, that individuals could sue them if it ends up they become a source of an outbreak or a super spread incident that would cause businesses to, in any other case, anytime that a business or an individual is able to be held responsible for their bad actions or their negligence or malfeasance, they don't do it because they're responsible for their actions. Why are we not holding people responsible for their actions and instead trying to mandate things and threaten to throw people in jail where they're almost certain to catch COVID-19 if they don't listen to government?
President Trump.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed, he said, This is a terrible thing. You're xenophobic. I think he called me racist even, and because I was closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You
I didn't
certainly
say
did.
Sugar Cola
You
Earthy,
certainly
and
did.
I talked about a xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about both of your
Red
different
herring
strategies
monitor.
to
He
handling
thought
this.
I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well, let's-
That's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President
No.
Biden? Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies toward dealing with
Do you
this.
want to
Mr. Vice
respond?
President,
No.
you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap in a golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the
You're also the one pushing for these lockdowns. You don't get to walk away and say, well, it was his fault. It was both of your faults, but that's beside the point now.
And a lot of the lockdowns had nothing to do with Trump. They were all being done by people in the states. They were being done by governors. They weren't being done by Trump.
Yeah, they were being done by state and by governors, and it was because at the federal level with Trump and Democrats,
Yes.
their agency that they've created and that he was enforcing was not allowing healthcare workers to do their job. They're still not allowing healthcare workers to do their job. I have spoken to people that have come out to my events who are unable to get cancer screenings that they need because their hospitals have been told that they can only treat COVID patients. Now, they say it's because there's a lot of COVID patients, but at a lot of hospitals there aren't. And also, untreated cancer has a markedly higher rate of fatality than COVID-19 does. This is doing far more harm than simply allowing people to make the best choices for themselves, letting hospitals make the choices, letting the suppliers that are supplying them with the things that they need to make choices, people to be able to work together voluntarily instead of having this top-down, centrally planned way of doing things, which is costing people's lives, not just with this, but with everything else.
Shut down, and we have to open our schools. And it's like, as an example, I have a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is
Force schools to reopen, we won't have a country. Is that what he just said?
That's what he, in many more words, yes.
What does he think the country is?
Well, yeah. People working so kids go to school.
Oh.
You know, I've said it often. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. And that's what's happening. And he wants to close down. He'll close down the country if one person in our massive bureaucracy says we should close it down.
Vice President
He
Biden,
just
your
admitted
response.
that he presides over a massive
Walk and chew
bureaucracy.
gum
Did
at the
anyone
same
catch
time.
that? That's
we ought to be able to
perfect.
safely open, but would they need resources to open? You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can take testing.
See, and now what he's not understanding is so many restaurants can't afford this. The margins on restaurants is razor thin.
Yep.
Razor thin. And now you're expecting them to do all of these new securities, like plexiglass dividers, when it used to be you just have them, you don't put them in booths right next to each other or tables near each other and try to keep them all 6 feet apart. And now you're trying to add more stuff, creating more for the business owner to have to pay for on top of trying to make sure they're still employing people.
Well, and you know what? Then the best way to do that, if you want to say, okay, you're going to have to run up this much cost in protective stuff, then cut that much cost from their business licenses, cut that much stuff from their health code licensing and everything else, so that they can actually afford to do business. That would be great. Then they're already losing money hand over fist anyway. Just cut the taxes, get rid of the taxes and the licensing fees and everything else, and they'll be able to afford to do that and much more. But you can't simultaneously tell a sector of the economy that has 2 and 3 and 4% margins that they need to completely retrofit their restaurants and simultaneously keep their capacity at half or 2/3 or whatever. They won't be able to, you won't have any restaurants. They're all shut down. Like Trump said, you won't even have a country.
They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer, and nothing's happened.
President, New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
when
about...
you say spike, take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison. Now it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. They're having spikes, and they've been closed, and they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. And we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems. And we will protect them. We have the best testing in the world by far. That's why we have so many cases.
Let me follow up with you before we move on to our next section.
Only like 3 or 4 of the types of test kits that are being made, including the ones, there are close to there are actually over a dozen types of test kits being made in this country, and only a handful of them have been approved yet. Even though they've been proven to work, mostly because those test results don't report automatically to the government. And so they're only approving test kits that report to the government, because as government thinks, if they can't find something out about you, you shouldn't be allowed to know either. And they're using it with this as well. There are people's lives who are being lost because the government would rather know that you have it than you be able to, then if they can't know that you have it, then they'd rather you die from it.
Right.
Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was. We've learned a lot. But Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now he wants to wear masks. Anthony also said, if you look back, exact words, here's his exact words. This is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be a good person.
He never said it was going to go away.
Vice President Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
My response is that think about what the president knew in January and didn't tell the American people. He was told this was a serious virus that spread in the air, and it was much worse than the flu. He went on record and said to one of your colleagues, recorded, that in fact he knew how dangerous it was, but he didn't want to tell us. He didn't want to tell us because he didn't want us to panic. He didn't want us, Americans don't panic. He panicked. But guess what? In the meantime, we found out in the New York Times the other day that in fact his folks went to Wall Street and said this is a really dangerous.
He just said that Americans don't panic, but back in 2001, after the September 11th attack, everybody jumped. Like, not anybody watching this show, obviously, but everybody jumped and supported the Patriot Act.
I was one of them.
Right.
I was one of the Americans that panicked because of what the media frenzy fed me.
Exactly.
Trump was right that it's bad to shut down the economy, although it's his own party that's taking part in that as well. Joe Biden was right that Trump tried to downplay it for political purposes. What neither one of them will admit is that none of that matters if you go down to the root cause of why we're facing this to begin with. The government didn't let healthcare workers do their damn jobs, test people, and save lives. That alone is the only thing that should even be talked about, and yet it's the one thing they refuse to talk about because there's no way they can spin that as being just the other one's fault. They have to admit that the entire Republican system is a failure. And of course, that's why Jo Jorgensen isn't on that debate stage, why they didn't allow her. Because she'd be able to sit there and watch them both blame each other, and then she could say, yeah, no, you're both right, you're both at fault. It was because of this, it was because of the lack of testing that you didn't allow. And here is how common sense libertarian solutions will fix that.
And
here,
a lot of people in the comments brought up a really good point. They say Americans don't panic. Remember when you couldn't buy toilet paper?
Yep.
That's because Americans panicked.
I made it clear, and I ask everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. And it's been overwhelmingly clear this election. I won't
$3.5 million to his son.
This election, that Russia has been involved,
That's
China has been
that's
involved
the
to some
price.
degree, and now we learn that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going on right now. They're interfering with American sovereignty.
Pure irony.
To the best of my knowledge, I
Someone
don't think
running
the
for president talking about interference in foreign elections is palpable. I hope that you can feel the irony at home. The U.S. government has straight up bombed, invaded, destabilized, and decimated entire regions of the planet based on who the military-industrial complex and central bankers want to be in charge. And it is just, if I were the head of a foreign state and there were a country, I know it's delicious.
The
If I were
irony.
the head of a foreign state and there were another country that, and the U.S. government was threatening to bomb my country, I'd probably want to be somewhat involved in their elections too, because their election outcome could very well be the difference of whether or not millions of my people die as a result of it. So yeah, probably the best way to stop foreign interference in our elections, if there even is such a thing in any mass way, is to stop U.S. interference in whether or not people in other countries are alive or not.
Right.
engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question. Why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you.
have to
Let
respond.
me ask the
Yes.
question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, let me respond to the first part as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife. And you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million. And, you know, someday you're going to have to explain, why did you get 3.5? I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, about your thing last night, I knew all about that. And through John Ratcliffe, who is fantastic, DNI, he said, the one thing that's common to both of them, they both want you to lose, because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, you know, I've got the NATO countries to put up an extra $130 billion, going to $420
Keep in mind,
billion a year.
what you're watching here is both arguing over which one is a greater supporter of the military-industrial complex, which one will institute more sanctions that harm you as a consumer and make it easier for us to end up at war with other countries while harming the livelihood of the people in those countries as well. Both of them are talking about NATO and how great it is. Neither one of them will admit that this entire system of U.S. imperial interventionism is the cause of the problems that we're facing with foreign policy and that it needs to end. So if you were wondering which one, you know, Trump for a very long time said that he was going to end the wars and change the way things are happening in foreign policy. This spectacle right here is a perfect example of how you can rest assured that that's never going to happen from either of these parties. They always talk about ending the wars until it's actually time to end the wars.
Explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family, but what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Vice President Biden, you may respond. 30
straight
seconds.
here.
And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned
That doesn't
this
mean that your family
paid
didn't.
50 times the
that doesn't
tax
mean your son
in
did.
China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever. Number one. Number two, this is a president, I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years. Go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking
I like
about
that they're both exposing the
Trump
fact that both of them are
all-
getting contributions and bribery from foreign countries.
foreign countries.
And their only response is, yeah, well, you are too.
It's whataboutism in the worst possible way.
It is. Again, this would be where Joe Jorgensen could say, I'd just like to note that I've never received a single penny from any crony interests overseas, and I'll let you guys get back to exposing each other.
Number of years, tens of millions of dollars I prepaid because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell you
told
when
you
you
that.
could release
Excuse
the
me.
money? Told
And
you
it
that.
wasn't written. Whenever they write this, they keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China.
By the way, one of the
You
few
do.
things that
don't
I
make
actually
money
like
from
about
Ukraine.
Donald Trump is the lack of taxes that he has paid. I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah.
That's like, if you want to make me dislike someone, don't tell me that they avoided being taxed, because if anything, that just endears them slightly to me.
Man, you're the big man, I think. I don't know.
Of course, he then used eminent domain
You're
to
the
steal
big
from
man, I
people,
think.
but I'm saying just
You
the
said
tax
you have to
part
give
alone,
10% to
we
the
should
big
all
man.
be paying
Joe,
next
what's
to
that all
nothing in
about?
taxes.
It's
If not,
terrible.
nothing.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some questions
I have
about
to
all of this,
respond to
but
that.
I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant
Yes.
about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you
As
have a
soon as the audit is
deadline for
finished.
when you're going to release them
I
to the
get
American
treated
people?
worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because
you
I have a
don't
lot
have
of
a time.
people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all
Your
settled until I
IRS.
decided to run for
It's
president.
literally
I get
your
treated very
IRS.
badly by the
You
IRS,
are
very
the head
unfairly.
of state
we had
of
a
this
deal all
country.
done.
You control every single executive office, every single regulatory agency, everything in the executive branch of government you own. You are not a victim of your own organization. You can fire anyone in there at your pleasure.
Entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance
Some
to
point
talk
about
about
this
this more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years? Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years
Everybody
you're going to
knows.
release your taxes. Nobody knows it, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
So,
President Trump, and then I want to get to two
Everyone should
questions
not
to
be
both of you.
paying taxes. Let's
Right.
be clear about that. The best way to settle this debate is to scuttle the IRS and to end taxation, and then no one has to argue over who's paying what, because none of us are being robbed by any amount by the government.
And
That's the best way to deal with that.
And when he did talk in 2016 in the debates with Hillary Clinton, when they did talk about taxes, she said he hasn't paid taxes in a decade or something like that. And he goes, yeah, that's because I'm smart. He has admitted to this. Like, you don't really need to see him because you already know what's going to be on it. And again, like Spike said, if somebody gets out of paying taxes, I'm not mad at them. It does sort of endear me to them. I don't
And
like
now you have, again, both candidates for the Republican Party who are extolling the virtues of paying lots and lots and lots of taxes.
Yep.
Again, if Joe Jorgensen was between them, she'd say, well, I'd like to point out that no one should ever pay any tax ever, and that we should eliminate all taxation.
Has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing, number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened.
So Joe literally was on camera saying how he bribed. I guess not really. I don't think bribed is the right answer, but he said he was going to withhold $1 billion in aid if they didn't fire the state prosecutor. Your camera is glitching really bad.
Oh, good. No.
But he was on camera and he said, yeah, I told him they had to fire him before I left at 9 p.m. Or they weren't going to get $1 billion. And they said, but before Joe left, they fired the prosecutor and he was able to get in. He gave him the $1 billion.
Can we use that?
I'm going to let the Vice President
That's
respond to that quickly,
100%
and then I need to get to a
dishonest.
question to you. Very
No
quickly,
basis
Mr.
for
Vice
that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President Trump, this is for you. Since you took office, you've never divested from your business. You've personally promoted your properties abroad. A report this week, which was referenced, does indicate that your company has a bank account in China. So how can voters know that you don't have any foreign conflicts of interest?
I have many bank accounts, and they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which is everybody knows about it, it's listed. The bank account was in 2013. That's when it was. It was opened it was closed in 2015, I believe. And then I decided, because I was thinking about doing a deal in China like millions of other people. I was thinking about it, and I decided I'm not going to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open, and I closed it.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then, unlike him, where he's vice president and he does business, I then decided to run for president after that. That was before. So I closed it before I even ran for president, let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his brother, and his other brother are getting rich. They're like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking
Okay,
up money
President
every
Trump,
place
thank
he
you.
goes.
We do
Not
need to
true.
move on. I do want to ask you, Vice President Biden, about China. Let's talk about China more broadly. There have, of course, President Trump has said that they should pay for not being fully transparent in regards to the coronavirus. If you were president, would you make China pay? And please be specific. What would that look like?
What I'd make China do is play by the international rules, not like he has done. He has caused the deficit of China to go up, not down, with China, up, not down. We are making sure that in order to do business in China, you have to give all your intellectual property. You have to have a partner in China. It's 51%. We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, when I was still vice president, he said we're setting up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly through them. I said we're going to fly through them. We just flew B-52, B-1 bombers through it. We're not going to pay attention. They have to play by the rules. And what's he do? He embraces guys like the thugs like in North Korea and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our friends, all of our allies. We make up we're 25% of the world's economy. We need to be having the rest of our friends with us saying to China, these are the rules. You play by them or you're going to pay the price for not paying by them economically. That's the way
Neither
I
one of
run
these
it.
people, by
That's
the
what
way,
we
are going to
did,
mention
and
the fact
upholding
that the
steel
reason that
tariffs and a
China
range
is in
of
the
other
position they are is because of crony regulations here that have made it unaffordable to do business in America, make things in America, and hire Americans. Again, instead of going back and forth on who's the bigger jerk on the stage, if they actually talked about the root cause of the problem, two things would happen. Number one, we could actually talk about changes that could be done tomorrow to begin the process of solving the problems they're talking about. And number two, they'd have to admit that they created the problem to begin with, and that it requires changing and going back on what they've done instead of doubling down and making it even worse.
Just gave
New
$28 billion.
sanctions? New
Listen,
sanctions?
I just gave $28 billion to our farmers. because
Taxpayers' money.
Taxpayer money.
It's what?
Taxpayers' money. Didn't come from
Yeah,
China.
you know who the taxpayer is? It's called China. China paid
true.
$28 billion, and
Wait, no, that's Joe. God, I hate saying this sentence. Joe Biden's right, but the money that was given to the farmers was from tariffs that we end up paying. We as consumers end up paying on Chinese goods that are coming in. That was not paid by China. We are paying these subsidies.
bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly. If you're making if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires, they're bald because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making.
He's giving my stump speech right now, except he's not actually talking about why this has happened. He's trying to blame it on Donald Trump as though people weren't struggling before Donald Trump came into office. Donald Trump is just the newest and most recent and most brutal enforcers of bad Republican policies. Policies that Republicans and Democrats like Joe Biden in his 50 years in D.C. have been signing off on and have made American lives harder. That's why we're in the mess that we're in right now. He's absolutely right. If you're at middle class or lower, you are struggling right now, and it's only getting worse. But that didn't start magically in January of 2017. That happened during the 8 years he was in the White House. That happened during the several decades before that as well. It happened even before he got into office. And it's happened because of Republicans and Democrats and their exclusive control of every lever of power in government in this country for decades now. They've used it to rob you of your power and your wealth and your freedom. They've used it to make your life more difficult in order to enrich billionaire cronies who bought and paid for them to be in office. That is why we're in the mess that we're in right now. It's not because of Donald Trump. It's not because of Joe Biden. It's because of the entire Republican system. And it only ends when we kick them out of office.
Plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me. We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship, and there's no war. And you know, about 2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, you know, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul, millions of people would be dead right now.
President
we
Trump,
don't have
that's
a war,
30
and
seconds.
I have a good
Thank
relationship.
you. Vice President Biden, to you, North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat?
Because I'd make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because here's I made it clear, and as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China, that they said, why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea? I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy who's a thug, and he talks about how we're better off, and they have much more capable missiles.
If he was the least bit serious about this, and if the Democrats or Republicans were the least bit serious about this, they wouldn't have handed food aid directly to that thug, as he called him, and instead they would be empowering and creating trade deals so that everyday North Koreans would be able to build themselves up. The reason that North Korea is as empowered as they are is because thanks to sanctions, the only way you can get food in North Korea is if you go to Kim Jong-un and beg for it. That's the only reason why he has the power he does. The sanctions have helped to empower him at the expense of everyday North Koreans who are literally starving to death and dying of like easily preventable illnesses and dying and starving and malnutrition and all sorts of other problems. That North Korean defector had like 3 different types of parasites in his bodies. The entire civil infrastructure of North Korea has been falling apart for decades, and it is because of sanctions and the fact that they have centralized the only source of food and the only source of medicine in North Korea is that dictator. And the reason he's pursuing nuclear weapons is because he doesn't want to get bombed, because that's the only way for a small country to ensure that they don't end up getting bombed by the U.S. is to either host U.S. military bases or to develop nukes so that the U.S. will leave them alone. You end the sanctions, you open up trade, and that problem deals with itself a lot sooner than it is right now. Woo!
It was the single biggest problem he thought that our country.
Okay, let's move on to American families and the economy. One of the issues that's most important to them is health care, as you both know. Today, there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and health care is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act.
It's whether or not you can get health care relies on who is a justice in the Supreme Court. The system is utterly flawed.
Yes, 100%. There was because we know what they're going to say on healthcare. There was a meme that went around that one of my buddies shared, and it was a gotcha meme because at the bottom, I just saw like the last line. It says, "I want healthcare," and the entire thing was bitching about I wish I could remember the wording on it, but it said, "We're spending X amount of dollars on bombing children, and you're asking me who's going to pay for healthcare? I want to pay for healthcare. Stop taking 30% of my income so I can buy healthcare so we aren't turning innocent children into skeletons. I will buy my own healthcare." And that was the greatest meme that I didn't post on Muddied Waters because I forgot.
And also, you wouldn't need to spend as much on healthcare to begin with if it wasn't being driven up by all of the bureaucracy and red tape coming out of DC. When you're in front of your doctor, you don't see the thousands or tens of thousands of administrators and regulators who all have to be paid as a part of the process. That's why they don't even know what your healthcare is going to cost for until weeks or even months after you got the service, because they have to run it through this Byzantine Leviathan model and finally have it spit out at the end what you're going to pay. But not before every single person involved in that is going to pay for it. Studies have shown that 3/4 of every dollar that you're spending on healthcare is just that red tape. If you get rid of the red tape and get rid of the taxation and pay for that system, then you can easily afford your own healthcare, and you don't have to rely on who's president or who's the next Supreme Court justice or who's the next senator to know whether or not you're going to be able to afford to get healthcare.
Terminate all of those policies. These are people that love their health care. People that have been successful, middle-income people, been successful. They have 180 million plans, 180 million people, families, under what he wants to do, which will basically be socialized medicine. He won't even have a choice. They want to terminate 180 million plans. We have done an incredible job on health care, and we're going to do even better.
Okay, Vice President Biden, yes, this is for you. Your health care plan calls for building on Obamacare. So my question is, what is your plan if the law is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
What I'm going to do is pass Obamacare with a public option, become Biden care. The public option is an option that says that if you, in fact, do not have the wherewithal if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly,
provide competition for insurance companies by dismantling the regulations that allow insurance companies to operate as a monolith, not by creating a government monopoly on healthcare. Public option is step one of single-payer healthcare. Yep. And if you want to know what single-payer government-managed healthcare looks like, ask a veteran. Ask someone who was told that they would get health care provided to them. Ask them what they look like. Ask them about having to spend months and years and sometimes decades to prove that they need the care. Ask them about having to wait months and sometimes years before they can get in front of a doctor. Ask them about having to travel hours and sometimes days to be able to see a doctor because the nearest medical facility is nowhere near them. Ask them what government-run healthcare looks like. That starts with a public option. The answer is, he said, you have more competition. Do you know how you have more competition? Getting rid of the regulations that stop the smaller competitors from being able to compete in the first place. Get rid of certificate of need laws that make it so that major crony hospitals and major healthcare providers choke out any smaller competitors from being able to legally compete against them.
Economic spillover. 10 million people have lost their private insurance. And he wants to take away 22 million more people who have it under Obamacare and over 110 million people with pre-existing conditions. And all the people from COVID are going to have pre-existing conditions. What are they going to do?
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to something that President Trump said. He's accusing you of wanting socialized medicine. What do you say to people who have concerns that your health care plan, which includes a government insurance option, takes the country one step closer to a health care system run entirely by the government? What's
I
your
say
response
it's
to them?
ridiculous. It's like saying that, we're the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose, that makes it a socialist plan. Look, the difference between the president, I think health care is not a privilege, it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable health care. And I am very proud.
And you're denying them of that right with bad government regulations.
Right. Right. I was going to say, everybody has the right to purchase health care. They should not be forced to purchase health care, which is what Obamacare did. You have the right to it. It is up to the company. You have to find the companies that are going to be able to make it affordable for you. And the less government regulation that they keep putting on them will make it more expensive.
And you have the right, and you shouldn't be forced to have your healthcare services run through this ridiculous red tape model that drives up the cost 4 or 5-fold what it would be otherwise.
Three-quarters. It was just a little while ago, right? Less than 4 years ago. He didn't do anything. He didn't do it. He wants socialized medicine, and it's not that he wants it. His vice president, I mean, she is more liberal than Bernie Sanders and wants it even more. Bernie Sanders wants it. The Democrats want it. You're going to have socialized medicine, just like you went with fracking. We're not going to have fracking. We're going to stop fracking. We're going to stop fracking. Then he goes to Pennsylvania after he gets a nomination, where he got very lucky to get it. And he goes to Pennsylvania and he says, oh, we're going to have fracking. And you never asked that question. And by the way, so far, I respect very much the way you're handling this, I have to say.
By the way.
But somebody should ask the question.
You can ask
he goes for a year. There will be
We
no
have
fracking.
we do have a number of topics we're
No,
going to
but
get
that's a
to.
big question.
I love whenever they make a
Same
point
thing.
of saying how big of a liar the other one is. That is, a Republican is no more on point when they complain that another Republican is a lying hypocrite.
Right.
Provide for that affordable health care, lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it. And you're going to have lower premiums. You can buy into the better plans, the cheaper plans, lower your premiums, deal with unexpected billing, and have your drug prices drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anybody on health care. Not a thing.
Kristen, when
Very
he
quickly,
says,
then I want to talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening on
public
Capitol
option,
Hill.
he's talking about socialized medicine, and when he and healthcare. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, and destroying your Social Security, and this whole country will come down. You know, Bernie
Get
Sanders.
big
tried
government
it.
out of my
He
Medicare.
tried-
This is, I mean, you want to talk about the teapot calling the kettle black. He is accusing Joe Biden of introducing socialism that's going to destroy Medicare. Totally different.
Totally different.
Totally different.
Situation that are going to destroy Medicare. This is the guy that the actuary at Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if in fact he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023. With
Because it's a
no
Ponzi
way
scheme.
to make up
No,
for it.
it is a Ponzi scheme. I've said this many times. If you and I and everyone in this room and everyone that's watching at home decided that we wanted to send up a retirement plan, and we modeled that retirement plan by simply copy pasting the Social Security model, we'd all go to jail for racketeering, because it is a Ponzi scheme. It is doomed to fail, especially when it can be rated at will by the people who are mandating that you be involved in it. The answer is what Joe's plan is, which is the 6.2% solution. Allow people who want to stay in Social Security to stay in Social Security. Allow the people who want to, instead of getting 0.5% returns every year, who want to instead get the 5 to 10% average returns every year that they can get from investing themselves privately with their own money. Let them opt out of the system, let them do it themselves, and have their employers, instead of matching their funds, pay into Social Security so that they can keep it solvent, and that over time, through attrition, as the number of people taking Social Security goes down and the number of people that are opting out goes up, then that 6.2% that employers are having to pay into it goes down to 5%, 4%, 3%, until eventually it's completely gone. We have completely divorced ourselves from this Ponzi scheme mess while protecting the people who were robbed and put into it largely against their own will.
I was watching your Q&A, bus tour Q&A on Sunday, and
Yes.
the explanation that you gave on Social Security was the clearest explanation of Social Security ever and how to get rid of it effectively. It was so brilliantly done. I have to give you major kudos on that one. That was really well done.
Thank you.
They'll have to get. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not want to approve it.
It's not just
we are
called
ready,
November
willing,
3rd,
and
it
able to
is
do
November
something.
3rd.
Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans, and it's gone through, including the Democrats, in all fairness. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President,
You know, the Republican leader in the United States Senate
Wait, did he
said
just
can't
was
pass
he
it.
just complaining that
He
the
will not be
Democrats
able to
won't
pass
help him
He
pass
does not
another
have Republican
multi-trillion dollar
votes. Why ain't he
bailout?
talking to his Republican
Yes.
friends?
let me follow up with you, Vice
It's a very
President.
good
Guys,
business
Because
plan.
let me ask Vice President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets and states that have to balance their budgets, so then have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers, so they could keep their
If the
cities and
federal
counties
government
running.
Is in a situation where their actions are deciding whether or not your firefighters exist or not, again, it's a failed system.
It is a failed system, and the federal government should not be responsible for paying your firefighters and your teachers and your police officers. That should all be handled locally.
Exactly.
Dollars to these kids. It was also a way of getting a lot of money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally. We were going to take care of everything for them. And what that does, and I'd love to do that, I'd love to help them, but what that does, everybody all over the world will start pouring into our country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for badly run Democrat cities and states.
All right,
By
I
the way,
want
if
to.
I get elected, I'm not going to. I'm
Most
running
of the
as a
money
proud
went
Democrat.
to
I'm gonna be
federal
the American
government,
president.
big
I don't
cronies.
see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first responders, because teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen.
That was
Mr.
not
Vice
even
President,
remotely what the
we are
founders
talking a
intended.
lot
Well,
about
that actually was what
businesses
Alexander
and
Hamilton
business
intended.
owners
Right.
these days.
I was going to say that's what one
Do
of
you
the
think
founders
this is
The-
intended.
right
the
time
founder,
to
the one
raise
founder.
minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum
I
wage.
do, because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need
How you could do
help.
that is by dismantling
Businesses-
the Department of Education at the federal level and give that $2 trillion back to the communities so they can decide what they need for their schools, empowered with their own money back, instead of having to force all of their money and the federal money to be used on failed, federalized, standardized testing programs that have done nothing but rob children of an ability to actually get an education and rob teachers of the ability to teach those children.
And raising the federal minimum wage is not going to help with that. That's just going to price other people out of jobs, and you're going to hurt lower income minorities trying to get into the workforce.
The minimum wage was put in place to make it difficult to hire black people. Let's be very clear. That's what the purpose of the minimum wage was. This is not in dispute. It is history. The way that you get wages to rise is by increasing the demand for American labor and reducing the supply of people looking for gainful employment. You do not do that through regulations that make it increasingly undesirable to hire Americans. You do just the opposite. Get rid of the taxes, get rid of the regulations, get rid of the burdens that make it increasingly undesirable to do business here. When you do that, the demand for American labor goes up and the supply of Americans looking for gainful employment goes down. And whenever the demand for something goes up and the supply for something goes down, the price for that thing skyrockets. That's how you deal with wages.
Clap for it as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level. And there is no evidence that when we raise the minimum wage...
Pause that for a second. Folks, round of applause. Who here could live, applause only, if you could live on $15 an hour? On $15 an hour. What's that? I'm single. You're single. You can live on $15 an hour. Let me rephrase that. $15 an hour for 40 hours is $150. That's $600 a week.
It works 40 hours.
And you are able to live on $600 a week without any kind of public assistance.
$12 an hour.
Okay, and you can live off of that. Okay. Another show of applause.
Well, I was going to say the cost of living is going to go up if the minimum wage goes to 15.
Fair enough. Okay, I'm in Iowa. I made a mistake there because I'm in Iowa, where apparently the cost of living is so low that that can happen. Here's another show of applause. Here's another, since I screwed up there by being in Iowa. Who here would rather, instead of being guaranteed a minimum wage, be able to have a job market where the demand for your labor is so high that you can choose who your employer is and what your wages and benefits are, because they need you more than you need them? Much better.
Repeat that question because it was tough to hear it.
Yes. I said, which thing was tough to hear?
The last question.
Okay. I said, who here would, rather than having a guaranteed wage of $15, would like a labor environment where they get to choose from the pick of the litter of people looking for their labor because the demand for it's so high? And they applauded.
Okay.
I made what I'm now going to call the Iowa mistake.
Let's talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you about
I will say this. They went
10
down,
seconds,
we
and then
brought
I need to ask
reporters,
you.
everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some
and
of them
gotten
haven't been
such
reunited
But
with
just
their
ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy,
He's
Mr.
right.
Vice President. The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration.
He's right.
It also
Obama
presided
built
over
it. He was
record
wrong about that they're
deportations
being
as well
treated
as
very
family
well.
detentions
The
at
way to
border
treat someone
before
well who's
changing
nothing
course.
wrong is
So
to
why
not
should voters
punish them in
trust
the
you with
first
immigration
place.
over
But he's
Not throwing
absolutely
them
right.
in
that
Made a
cage.
mistake.
this
Took
is
too
not
long
an
to get it right.
exclusive Trump
Took too long
issue.
to get it right. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact is,
Wow,
I've
did
made
he
it
just
very
throw
clear.
Obama under the
He
bus?
just
In
threw
100
Obama
days,
under
I'm
the
going to
bus.
send to the United States
Wow.
Congress a pathway to citizenship for over
Come on,
11
man.
million undocumented people. And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are being sent home by this guy and they want to do that is they've gone to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River and it's illegal. And you say, oh no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis.
Then why did
We
Obama
owe
deport
them.
them?
Right. Obama has actually deported, or he did. He deported more people than Trump.
Yeah. In his first term,
And
he deported more people than Trump has. So if anything, Trump is a moderate improvement, if you could call it such a thing. His rhetoric has been much worse,
Right.
but in terms of his actual actions, it's been roughly the same. Actually, it was slightly worse under Obama.
Right.
But again, like Joe Biden said, I was just the vice president. I wasn't the president. He just really, really threw Obama under
Yes,
the
he
bus.
did.
That's pretty funny.
They were arrested. They, in fact, were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released. And guess what? They showed up for a hearing. And this is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case that I seek asylum based on the following premise: why I deserve it under American law. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
President Trump, your response,
so
30
important.
seconds, and then we'll move
It just shows that he has no understanding of immigration or the laws. Catch and release is a disaster. A murderer would come in, a rapist would come in, a very bad person would come in. We would take their name. We have to release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out to find them. We would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe.
Yeah.
They never come back. Only the really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay,
But they're
President
very,
Trump, let's
very
give
few.
Vice President Biden a chance to respond, and then we're going to move on to the
You
next
don't know
section.
the law, Joe.
Vice President Biden, your response.
So once again, we have two presidents who are arguing for the same thing. They are arguing for people who are coming here to escape the consequences of the war on drugs and U.S. military policy destabilizing their countries. They're arguing for anyone who comes here to try to seek a better life to be treated with the presumption that they've done something wrong and to be treated like a criminal. Now, when my ancestors came here from Eastern Europe to escape genocide and persecution, when they had gotten here, the current policies that are in place right now and the policies that were in place when Barack Obama was president, the policies that have been in place for the last 50 plus years, if those policies had been in place, they would have been put in a cage. They would have been held until it was time to send them back to Eastern Europe, where they would have been murdered. I would not be here. Most of us and our ancestors would not be here. We need to return to the Ellis Island policy. People come here, they give their name, they give their country of origin, they get checked for communicable diseases, and then they are allowed to take part in the American dream. You have two parties who are both arguing for the same failed immigration, the same war on migration, and the same war on the border that has led to harmful outcomes for American citizens who have to live under this surveillance super state that forces them to submit all their information to a federal database every time they want to get a job, anytime they want to get a mortgage, anytime they want to get a new car, anytime they want to get utilities put in their name, anything that they want to do, they have to essentially get federal permission and be checked by a federal database where they could potentially be detained. And we're within 100 miles, and again, I'm not going to ask this here because I'm in Iowa. I'm not going to make that mistake again. But where over 2/3 of Americans live, which is within 100 miles of the borders or shores or coastline, the U.S. government retains the authority, the presumed authority, unconstitutional authority, to detain you against your will without any stated reason for immigration purposes. It is a blatant and total violation of the rights of the people. It does nothing to keep us safe, and both of them are pushing for it.
And let's point out that Trump just said only low IQ people follow the law.
What's that?
Trump just said only low IQ people follow this law.
Yes, which was kind of funny.
I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things, just to give people a shot.
Yeah, only low
It's
IQ
about
people are in this
accumulating the
debate.
ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did such harm to the black community. And they were called, and he called them super predators.
He's
And he
not wrong.
said that. He said it, super predators. And they have never lived that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators. Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald
It was
Trump.
actually
And if
Hillary
you
Clinton
look,
who called them super
with
predators.
the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done. Criminal justice reform. Obama and Joe didn't do it. I don't even think they tried because they had no chance at doing it. They might have wanted to do it, but if you had to see the arms I had to twist to get that done, it was not a pretty picture, and everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform,
You did
opportunity zones.
sentencing
with Tim
reform.
Scott,
Criminal
a
justice
great senator
reform
from
would not
South-
just be some on the tinkering on the edges sentencing reform. Criminal justice reform would be requiring prisons to give the same conditions to workers in prison that everyone else has to give to workers outside of prison, which would end the for-profit prison labor that's happening right now. Criminal justice reform would be ending qualified immunity. Criminal justice reform would be ending the war on drugs. Criminal justice reform would be ending civil asset forfeiture and mandatory minimum sentencing and no-knock raids and a host of other terrible things that Republicans and Democrats implemented, and that both of the people on that stage have taken a part in both brutally implementing and brutally enforcing. That's real criminal justice reform. You will never get it from the Republicans, ever.
Nope.
with them, and they like me and I like them, but I saved colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about both of your records, but your response to that, Vice Chair.
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is the guy who said, the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the
He's
quote,
not wrong.
the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who were going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty.
Both
of
of
what
these
the
two
crime-
are right
crime
about
family
how horrible
suggested.
the other one is, by the way.
And talk about, granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people's sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people's sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that, in fact, initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration.
But the state prison systems continue to rise because of the federal war on drugs. The federal, the reason the federal prison rate went down was because you deported them. Most of the people in federal prison are there for immigration reasons. So you just deported them. That's why it went down, because they weren't even here anymore. The state prison rates went up during that time because of the federal war on drugs that Barack Obama brutally enforced just as much as the previous ones before him, and that Donald Trump has continued to brutally enforce.
Keep talking about all these things you're going to do, and you're going to do this, but you were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama.
You've been
'Cause you did
president
a
for
poor
4
job.
years and
If
done
I
nothing.
thought
Both of these two have been in office and are accusing the other one of talking but not doing. But they're both right. They're both right. The other one talked and didn't do.
Then I do have some questions for both of you.
Well, I tell you what, I hope he does look at me, because what's happening here is, you know who I am, you know who he is, you know his character, you know my character, you know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race.
This is the man that dropped out of the 1988 presidential race because he plagiarized his speeches, and he said, yes, I definitely did that, and I now have to drop out for these lies that I have committed. And now he is saying, I am the honorable one who is telling the truth. I'm not defending Donald Trump, saying he's the honorable one. Because no, that's not it. But for Joe to be able...
The honorable one isn't there right now, and that's why she isn't there, among many other reasons, is because she's the honorable and trustworthy one.
President Trump,
And I
you've
have
just...
to respond to that.
Please,
Because look,
very
there
quickly.
are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
That's exactly what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what.
This is where he's going. The laptop is Russia,
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You
okay?
have to be kidding. Here we
Mr.
go
President,
again with Russia.
We're going to continue on the issue of race. Mr. President,
believe
you've
that one.
described the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power to millions of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
Well, what do you say to Americans who are concerned about that?
I don't
He
know what
just
to
called
say.
her a
Criminal
racist.
Justice reform done, and prison reform, and opportunity
Come on,
zones. I
man.
took care of black colleges and universities.
Wait, is
I don't know what to
Melania
say.
in that room? Did
They
he
can
just
say
call Melania a
anything.
racist?
No, she didn't go
They can say
because of
anything.
COVID complications.
It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark, but I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay, Vice President Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history.
Did he just call him
pours
Abraham
fuel
Lincoln?
on every single
What'd he say?
racist fire.
He just said Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents in modern history. He called
I
him.
don't even know what he called him Abraham Lincoln.
He called him Abraham Lincoln.
Does he think that that's Abraham
the
Lincoln?
board. He says to the
You know what's
board,
sad? There is at least a
last time we were
20%
on
possibility
stage,
that
said,
he
I told
thinks
him to
that
stand
Abraham
down
Lincoln is
and
there.
stand ready. Come on. This guy is a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a follow-up.
He made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You
Yeah,
said
no, I
Abraham
do
Lincoln.
wanna know.
where did that? No.
You said-
I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community.
And I'm
I
saying-
didn't say I'm Abraham Lincoln. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for
Oh,
the
man,
black
you said you were Abraham
Now,
Lincoln.
You have done
Come on,
nothing
man.
other than
man.
the crime bill, which put
Oh, God.
tens of thousands of black men mostly in jail.
All right, let me-
And you know
let me
what?
a- let me
they
ask
remember
Vice
it
President
because if you
Biden
look
a
at what's
question.
happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that
Biden
you treated them
about-
very, very badly.
The-
Just
the-
take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime
Okay.
bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men.
He
who
is
had small
detailing
amounts of
why
drugs in
neither
their
one of these
possession.
people should
Their
ever be
sons,
elected to
their
anything.
brothers, their fathers, their uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering
I
the
mean, imagine what her
consequences.
question
So
to
speak
Joe
those
Jorgensen
families.
would
Why
have to be.
should they
Joe
vote?
Jorgensen,
One of the things is that
What do
in
you
the
think about
80s,
this?
we
She didn't do
passed
any of these things. You're saying any of these
100%.
things.
All one-
Joe Jorgensen, do you think he's anything like Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah, Joe Jorgensen,
deal
you
with
have been
drugs. It was a
suspiciously
mistake.
silent as to
I've
whether
been
or
trying
not
to
Donald
change the
Trump is
sentence,
Abraham Lincoln.
particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what
This is apparently very new for Joe. This is very new for Joe because as of last year, November of 2019, I believe, he was saying that marijuana is a gateway drug and people who are in possession of it belong in jail. He refused to say that it should be decriminalized up until earlier in this campaign season. He is
The
one of-
Democrat Party on their platform voted down 2-1. They voted down legalizing marijuana.
Yep. He is 100% not
Making
in
it up right
yeah,
now.
he is making this up as he's going along.
Obama
never
is
said
your
this.
president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because You're all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a
Your
lot of it
response.
done. We released
get
38,000.
anything
We got
done.
38,000 prisoners left from the.
You got nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal
Again,
prison.
they're both
We
right.
got-
Neither one of them
there
got
were
anything.
over 1,000
Right.
people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running, to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
I
Quick
just
response,
asked,
and then we're
I
gonna
just
move
asked
on
one
to climate
question.
change.
Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. You put tens
Because-
of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why,
Because-
Joe? Because you're all talk and no action.
All right, Vice President
Because
Biden,
we had
and then
a
we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress.
Wow.
Whoa.
For the first 2 years.
Yeah, not for the first
had
2
a
years.
Democrat supermajority for the
All
first
right.
two
You got
years.
to talk them into
We
it.
We're going to move on to our next section,
Like I
which
did with
is
criminal
climate
justice.
change.
And for Joe Biden to be talking criminal justice reform and we're going to make this change, you have Kamala Harris as the president of the Senate if he wins. This is the woman that has locked up thousands of black men for smoking weed and then joked about smoking weed herself. She has withheld evidence on two that we know of.
Two
right?
capital murder cases.
Two capital
she withheld
murder cases.
exonerating evidence. Yeah.
Right. And you're going to sit there and try to say that you are the law and order candidates and that you're going to be the one that's going to turn it around with the criminal justice and be able to help out the black community. Again, don't like saying it. Trump's kind of right. Why didn't you do this in the 8 years that you guys were in office beforehand? And then on top of it, why did you pick a candidate to be your VP who has such a terrible, awful, just horrendous record on this when she was the district attorney?
She locked up almost 20 times as many black people as white people, using his 1994 crime law as the main vehicle for her putting people in jail. She locked away almost 100% of the people that she locked up, the women that she locked away for truancy violations of that their teenage children were making while they were at work. Almost all of them were black. It was like an 80-to-1 ratio of black people to white people that she locked up for that truancy. Like, these are the most brutal enforcers of bad policy. Donald Trump, again, also one of the most brutal enforcers as well. But there is no way that the Democrat Party can pick these two and then turn around and say Black Lives Matter. They and their policies, working with Republicans every single year, are the reason for the unrest that we are seeing in the streets right now.
Cleanest water and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Vice President
And we
Biden.
haven't destroyed our industries.
Vice President Biden, 2 minutes to you, uninterrupted.
Climate change, climate warming, global warming is an existential threat to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit the limit of emissions will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the.
So he's basically.
None of this is going to do anything.
Yeah, he's basically going through the Green New Deal at this point, where he's saying the charging stations and we're going to refit buildings with green whatever.
we're gonna spend massive amounts of money on crony businesses doing retrofitting that they promise will fix this stuff when we don't know if that's even the case. What we do know is that a bunch of energy is going to be used to do all this stuff, and it may or may not work in the future. If either one of these two was serious, they would look at the reason why we have this to begin with. Because crony polluting companies are indemnified against any liability when they do damage to our environment, to our property, and to our health. If we simply were empowered to be able to sue them out of existence when they did these things, they wouldn't do it. And that's just as simple as it gets. And the fact that neither one of them will mention this when it's the only way forward on this to protect the property rights of the American people and of anyone who has an actionable cause against someone who has done damage to their property, in this case through pollution and leaks and so forth and dumping and everything else. If you were able to simply allow Americans to sue crony businesses when they do this damage, the problem would solve itself because they would self-regulate so that they wouldn't end up going out of business. All of the nonsense they're about to say is a bunch of crony picking winner and losers garbage. It's the next Solyndra. It's the next Enron. It's the next big example that a few years later we'll find out was all just a bunch of theft and graft and bribery and bankrupted companies that never had an actual plan. It is government just robbing you to give to their favored cronies and doing nothing to actually solve the problem because they don't want to solve the problem. They want it to keep getting worse so that it's more and more of a crisis so that they can come to you and go, look at this terrible crisis. Give us trillions of more dollars. We're going to fix it this time.
Right. And you'll hear Biden, he'll go on, we're going to work on electric and we're going to look at renewables like solar and wind and whatever. And Trump's going to say, no, good, clean coal, as he says. But neither one of them will mention nuclear, which by far is cleaner than anything that they could possibly throw out at these debates.
Yep. Any conversation about climate change and reducing our carbon footprint that is not centered around what is currently the cleanest and safest and cheapest and most plentiful form of energy, which is nuclear, and the fact that our regulatory agencies and regulatory burden has made it cost prohibitive to build new nuclear power plants and has actually forced some of the older ones offline before their time was up. That's not only driven up the cost of energy, but has also massively increased our carbon footprint. It's not a serious conversation if you're not talking nuclear. And we don't have to give any tax breaks to nuclear. We don't have to give any subsidies to nuclear energy. We just have to remove the regulatory burden so that the market will naturally move to what is the cheapest, the cleanest, and the most carbon neutral, and that's nuclear.
Is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean. One other thing.
Find me a scientist
Solar.
said that.
I love solar, but solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's not powerful yet to
Rick just said this debate is all natural gas.
Factories that we need to compete with the world. So
False.
It's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the economy, get rid of your oil industry. You want. And what about fracking?
All right, let me allow
fracking.
Vice President Biden to respond.
I never said I oppose fracking.
Yes, he
You
has.
said it on tape.
I did. Show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter
Yeah,
is,
We'll put it on our website too.
Yeah,
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time
Chairman Mike of
is
the
make
Libertarian
sure that
Party
we
of
can
Iowa just
capture
noted that it's
the
very
emissions
possible that Joe
from
Biden
the
has
fracking,
forgotten what
capture
fracking
the
is.
emissions from gas.
Or that he never
We can
knew.
do that, and we can do that by investing money and doing it. But it's a transition to that.
I have one more question in this pod, and then
Excuse me,
we have.
he was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking
You
and
said
or oil on
didn't say
federal
Let
land.
me ask this
I
final
did.
question.
Federal
in this
government
section,
owns
and then I wanna
28%
move on
of the
to our
land in this
final
country
section.
and the vast majority of
President
the
Trump, people
unused
of
land
color
on this
are much
country.
more
So
likely
even if
to
he
live
only
near
said
oil
that, that's
refineries and chemical
effectively the
plants.
same.
In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they're making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's
have great
9
jobs.
times greater
They are
the
dying, but they
percentage
have great
gain
jobs.
than
Well,
it
they
was
did
under
before
in
all
3
this.
years.
They had
than it was
amazing
under
jobs before the
8
whole
years
dying.
of the 2 of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic.
Okay.
We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationships,
saved you
we got
from
Saudi
paying lower
Arabia,
gas prices.
Mexico, and Russia to
And
cut
people are
back,
dying.
way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All
And
right.
everybody has very inexpensive gasoline.
I just as a throw.
No, it's not expensive. Gas is not inexpensive. Go
Well,
ahead.
I mean, it's cheaper now than it has been in like 10 years.
No, it was actually cheapest in 2017, 2016 was when it was cheapest, I believe.
I never remember. Okay, so me personally, I don't remember seeing it below $2 any time before this, besides a long time ago.
Yeah.
So now that I see it at $1.97 some places, that's why I'm like, okay, well, we're at the lowest gas prices in forever. I could be wrong, and I'm willing to admit that, but just
Your money was robbed from you
Right.
to jack up to subsidize oil companies so that they could keep their price of their product high without suffering as a result of that. You were robbed to make your oil prices higher.
and as a throw, just I hate the way that Trump says industry. Have you realized how he says it? It's obnoxious. He goes industry.
Industry.
Yeah.
This is a
Well,
man
if you
that
let me
eats
finish the
his
statement.
steak well done with ketchup. So nothing about it surprises me.
And I'd
It
stop
should be.
giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, excuse me, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do give
All
it
right.
to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question.
is
Again,
he is
both
going
of
to
them,
President.
both
destroy
of them right now are
the oil
arguing over
industry.
which one is
Will
going
you
to give the
remember
most
that, Texas?
subsidies
Will you
to
remember that
industries
Pennsylvania,
that one
Oklahoma?
not providing much energy and the other one doing a bunch of polluting, instead of just deregulating and letting the market go naturally where it would go to nuclear.
And Joe Biden, what he said was, if we're not going to give subsidies to solar and wind, why would we give it to the oil companies? And I'm like, yes, you're getting on the right track.
Yeah,
And then he was
I'm
like, no,
liking
we
it.
should give it to
I'm liking it.
everybody. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you're almost there. No, you went away from it.
Yeah.
Paris Accord and make China abide by what they agreed to.
All right,
That'll
this
cost you
is
$1
about
trillion.
China was completely exempt in the
And
Paris
this
Accord.
first
That was the
question
most ridiculous
does go
part
to
of that.
President
Abide by
Trump.
what? They didn't have to
Imagine
do
this is
anything.
your
And all of this is a red herring
What will
because
you say
these
in
jobs
your address
that are
to
in
Americans
China came
who
from the
did not
U.S.
vote
So
for
when
you?
you
You'll each have-
overregulate the business market here in the U.S., they go to China, which was never held to any standard for climate change, nor would they ever agree to it. So you're actually causing climate change to get worse, not only because those jobs are being made in a country that has fewer, that has a more pollution in the way that they create things, but then it has to be shipped all the way back over here in giant tankers, which exponentially increases the carbon footprint on all the things that we're buying from them. The way that you deal with that is by deregulating here, making it more desirable and more affordable to do business here and make things here and hire people here. Not only does that fix the economic problems, not only does that fix the social problems, not only does that fix the foreign policy problems of China and other dictatorships becoming increasingly powerful, it also solves the environmental problem. Have it made here cleaner by deregulating and by bringing in nuclear by simply deregulating. When you allow people, when you free people to be able to do what makes the most sense for them in voluntary cooperation with others, they will come up with better solutions intuitively than a bunch of line-thieving sociopaths and cronies in D.C.
Clap for
Your
that.
inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you.
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities.
truth over
enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this
Choose
economy,
truth over facts.
deal with the systemic racism, and at the same time, we can
Yeah, we're
make
gonna
sure
choose
that
to
our
vote- we're
economy
gonna choose to
is
vote Libertarian
being
over
run
Republican and
moved
Democrat.
and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country. Decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity. Making
Yeah,
sure
then
that
why are
everyone
either of
has
these
an
two
even
on the
chance.
ballot?
Right.
And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right, I want
But
to
only
thank
in the
you
last
both
4 years.
for a very
Everything was fine
robust
before
hour and a
27.
half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President.
Yeah, that's the end of that.
Well, that's why.
Yeah. So that was exactly what I kind of assumed it was going to be like. I know a lot of people were saying, "Can't you pause it?" And no, because that would make this debate into a 4-hour show. And
Oh yeah, yeah.
no,
It
we're
would
not
be
gonna do
it
that.
would be a very, very unnecessarily long show. Yes.
Yes.
We just talk over that.
Right. Yeah. We're just going to talk over them. Turn it on your phone or your TV while you're watching us. Whichever device you aren't using, watch them on that. But that debate went pretty much how I thought it was going to go. It seemed a lot more civil, but the only reason it seemed more civil is because they were literally forced into that position. You still had, you could see them, they were both interrupting each other. It's just you couldn't hear it.
Yeah, no, it was a slightly more civil than the last one, but they didn't really present any real options. They just kept blaming the other one.
Right.
The one difference was because they didn't yell over and interrupt each other for the most part. And the only reason was that they had a mute button this time, and they said that they'd mute them if they kept doing it. So they didn't do it because they didn't want to get muted. But literally the entire rest of the tenor and tone of the debate was the same. That guy's a prick, and he's a jerk, and he lied to you, and he's going to do terrible things. Well, no, that guy's a lying jerk, and he did terrible things too. Yeah, no, they're both right. They both did terrible things. You did nothing in office. You say you're going to do all this stuff, but you didn't do anything while you were in office. Well, you said you were going to do stuff, and you didn't do it. Yeah, no, again, you're both terrible. We hate you, and you should definitely be replaced by someone else. This is why Joe Jorgensen was excluded from the debates. This is why I was excluded from the VP debates. Again, if you had a sane adult there who could form a coherent sentence and could present actual policies, and when these two get to the which one's a bigger jerk contest, we could stand in the middle and go, I agree, you're both terrible. Let's talk about actual policies. Their entire rope-a-dope would fall apart. They rely on being the good cop to their voting base and the bad cop to the other one's voting base, so that everyone's voting out of resentment and fear. Because if that doesn't, if they don't continue that, if they don't continue to play good cop here and bad cop over there, while the other one plays bad cop, good cop here and bad cop over there, if instead there's someone else in the middle going, they're both liars. They both messed this up. They and their parties and policies have worked together to make your life miserable. The entire jig would be up. The entire thing would be up. That's what we just saw in Indiana with Donald Rainwater. You had the Democrat and the Republican doing the same old rope-a-dope, and Donald Rainwater talking directly to the voters in Indiana saying, you know what you get from them. I want to give you your money back. I want to give you your power back. We can live a better life, and it's not going to come from big government impositions on you. That's what got us here. And that's why Donald Rainwater is going to be the next governor of Indiana. Ricky Harrington showed up for his debate, and Tom Cotton was so horrified about that, he decided not to even show up. And Brad Barron's about to do it on the 26th in between McGrath and McConnell. Cocaine Mitch is going to have nowhere to run because Brad Barron is going to be able to lay out point blank why both of their parties and the policies that they have worked together to create have created the mess that Kentuckians are in. This is why Republicans are horrified at libertarians being in the debate, because their entire good cop, bad cop rope-a-dope falls apart at the seams, and they both look like the schmucks that they are.
Yep. Now, yeah, literally everything from that debate, the Ricky Harrington, if anybody hasn't seen the Ricky Harrington debate, that dude could read me The Shining and I would sleep like a baby. He has the most calming voice I have ever heard in my life.
At a time when Americans are horrified at what's going on, there was someone there who was letting them know it was going to be okay. We just needed to change course. Instead of all this crisis nonsense that they're constantly hearing from Republicans and Democrats, that this is a gigantic crisis and you have to give us control or everything's going to fall apart and you're all going to die. He said, no, we the people can work together, but first we have to change course. We have to get rid of the people that created this mess and put the power back in the hands of the people. And that when you do that, we'll be able to live better lives. We'll be able to thrive. We'll be able to prosper. It is the same message that libertarians give every single time. It is why they are horrified at having us on the debate stage. Now, the good news is tomorrow, after a episode of My Fellow Americans, starting at I'm not 100% sure when, immediately after that episode of My Fellow Americans, I will be participating in a VP debate with Mike Pence and Kamala Harris. They didn't want to invite me to their staged rigged debate, so I'm not inviting them to ours. The Seth and Willie Fred show, they have found actors that are going to play Mike Pence and Kamala Harris. I am going to play Spike Cohen, and we are going to engage in the debate that those two deserve, which is a fake one. That'll be tomorrow night at, hold on a second. Tomorrow night at exactly 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. I will be on the Seth and Willie Fred show. I'll be sharing it on my social media, on Facebook, and I will be engaging in the debate between two people who honestly are probably better I don't know what their names are, but they're actors playing Pence and Harris. And I would take either one of them for vice president over the actual Pence and Harris.
So you're going to do an episode of My Fellow Americans, do this debate tomorrow?
Yes, on my day off.
Look, Spike has a day off and America wins. I just want to say this week, Monday, was the first day for early voting here in Florida. So if you are a Floridian like me, you can go and early vote in person, which is what I did. And it was one of the most surreal things to, one, actually vote for a candidate that I believe in, one who I know can do the job, one who can talk to the American people without raising blood pressures across the board, but also be able to vote for somebody who is my best friend and my business partner. And
if you see someone else's name after this, I'm going to kill you.
Which is why I voted for Donald Trump. But which, I got to vote for Spike. And honestly, it was when people talk about wasted votes, this was the one vote I have done since I have been legally old enough to vote that I feel was not wasted. It was the one time where I knew that my vote was going towards something that I 100% believed in. And in all honesty, thank you to Spike for running and making that a possibility.
Thank you. Everyone should listen to what Matt just said and also vote for me for all the reasons he stated and more. I appreciate it. I never know what to say in response to people who tell me that they voted for me and like how great I am and how wonderful Joe and I are, other than to just say thank you. And that's why we are running. We are running to dismantle these bad systems and put that power and that money back in your hands. We're never going to get what we need to get out of life. We're never going to fix these problems that they've created until we kick them out and kick their cronies out and end the gravy train where they just rob you of trillions of dollars to make them rich. We have had decades of universal basic income for billionaires. It needs to end. We need to end this entire system and instead go back to what is supposed to be, which is you empowered with your own power, your own freedom, your own money, and all of those barriers and burdens removed so that you can work voluntarily with other people and thrive. That is what Joe and I are running on. That is what libertarians up and down the country are running on. That's what people like Rick, who's running for Congress, and Myra, who's running as well. Come on over here, folks. Come on over. Myra, what are you running for again?
Iowa House District 70.
This is what, here, you have to come where you can see in here.
Oh, wait.
We can see. Oh,
Myra,
no, we can't.
Myra is running for Iowa House District 70. Rick, what is it you're running for?
United States Senator from Iowa.
This is what, you could have the first libertarian senator right here. These are the folks that we need you to support, whether you're in Iowa or another state. Go Google these people, go look for the Libertarian Party of Iowa, look for the Libertarian Party in your state. It is at the grassroots level that we will take this country back and put the power and the money and the freedom back in the hands of the people where it always belonged.
Also, superfan Sarah Anderegg, she wanted me to let you know. I'm not going to make that joke, but she wanted me to let you know that that was her first time voting, and she took the time to vote for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, Sarah. Thank you for all your efforts for Muddied Waters. And
because she makes a lot of effort for Muddied Waters.
Stop. So thanks so much for tuning in, folks. Again, tune in tomorrow for a special episode of My Fellow Americans. Not 100% on when it's going to be yet, but we are going to work on that. I'll let you know as soon as I know. And then tune in tomorrow night, starting at, again, at, 9 p.m. Eastern? Starting at 9 p.m. Eastern for the Seth and Willie Fred show, where I will be participating in the fake debate that America demands with Mike Pence and Kamala Harris, and actually Spike Cohen. Literally Spike Cohen will be there. And then tune in next week for another episode of the Muddy Waters of Freedom, where Matt Wright and I parse through the week's news like the cheery little winter. I'm going to get some warmer shoes because I'm freezing. The sweet winter cherubs that we are. Matt, if someone were looking to try to be on the internet while looking at Muddy Waters Media at the same time, is that even possible? And if so, how?
It is possible. In fact, for those of you who are old school, who enjoy hearing the sweet, sultry, buttery sounds of our voices and not looking at these two gorgeous faces in front of you, all you have to do is go to anchor.fm/muddiedwaters, where you can leave us messages that we will play live on the air.
Leave us a message.
And you can also donate money to you so we can continue to bring you the high quality content that you have grown accustomed to over the years.
Give us money.
And you can find this and every other episode at muddiedwatersmedia.com. Thank you to everybody out there who sent us super chats through the YouTube. Thank you to all of you who did that. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Make sure that you share this with every single person that you know. Share, like, and share the message of liberty. That's all we can do, folks. All we can do is get around this crony system and spread the message of liberty at the grassroots level. It's what we do every single day long, and it's how we're going to move the cause of maximizing human liberty forward. Folks, thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow, and then we'll see you later next week. And where we're going, we don't need roads.
If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote! If you don't vote, that's pathetic. Vote! If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote for me. If you don't vote, that's pathetic.
We're leading in Arizona, Nevada. We're leading in Pennsylvania. Winning Tampa to Tallahassee. From Pensacola to Miami. Winning. I'll kiss the guys and the beautiful women. And now they say I'm immune. I go so powerful. I'll walk into that audience. I'll walk in there. I'll kiss everyone in that audience.
I don't like either one of them, so I'm not going to vote. You just voted for the wrong one. Yeah, but I don't like either one of them. Then you just voted for the wrong one. Vote! If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote! If you don't vote, that's pathetic. Vote! If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote for me. If you don't vote, that's pathetic.
This president knew back in January. Why didn't he tell us? Why didn't he warn us? He told Woodward he didn't want to panic. We don't panic, but Trump panicked. I'm running as a proud Democrat for the Senate. I'm running as a proud Democrat for vice president. I'm running as a proud Democrat for president. Which way am I going?
I don't like either one of them, so I'm not going to vote. You just voted for the wrong one. Yeah, but I don't like either one of them. Then you just voted for the wrong one. Vote! If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote! Vote! Vote!
Vote.
If you don't vote, that's pathetic. Vote! Vote! Vote!
Vote.
If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote! Vote! Vote!
Vote for me.
If you don't vote, that's pathetic. If you have the idea that you're gonna have to wear a mask in November, you got more faith in this virus. Even if you do, put your mask on and go vote. Something that is equally pathetic is people that don't vote. Cast your ballot, which is your seat. We have to put a stop to fight over politics. I don't like either one of them, so I'm not going to vote. You just voted for the wrong one. Yeah, but I don't like either one of them. Then you just voted for the wrong one. Vote! Vote! Vote!
Vote.
If you don't vote, shut your mouth. Vote! Vote! Vote!
Vote.
If you don't vote, that's pathetic. Vote!